Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
Delivered to a missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and advised that the mother had went for a walk, came home, now they can't find her, they've been yelling for her.
Turn it over to another agency. Let's get some help.
Where are your kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say? You're over here in Hawaii? Chad, where are Lori's kids?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Hello, Allison, Delaney. I saw Florida Bass Fishing. Amanda, Lady Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Steph, if I haven't said hello to you, I see you. Good morning, everyone. I just want to get started because I do want to kind of wrap this up before court starts because I know a lot of you are watching it in live action. So we'll just get started. Pretty much, I want to know right before we play my pre-recorded edited stuff I put together for you guys. Do you believe Alex did well on the stand last week? And do you think that he did well during cross-examination? Now, do you also think that the state has proven their time of death? Now, they believe that the time of death was right after those Snapchat videos were taken, so that only leaves it to be around like 8:46, 8:50-ish. Do you believe that the state has proven that that is the time of death? Good morning, Twisted Gemini and Jesse. I hope everyone had a great weekend and everyone can hear me, right? So I have my notebook with my notes in it. I also have some clips that I've clipped together. I'm thinking I'm just going to play the stuff that I've put together for you guys, and I can pause it and elaborate as I need to, and I'll use my notes to do that as well. So I hope everyone has their coffee, and I hope everyone has a wonderful week coming up, and let's just get started, guys.
It's a long story. My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats.
Hey, watch the step. There is parts next to him there.
I'm curious who's seen the Netflix documentary on this. It was really good. I give like a more elaborate review near the end of this little segment, but pretty much I just wanted to point out a few things that the Netflix series didn't point out. Again, I understand that a lot of the information they just didn't have available because it was supposed to be saved for court and for trial. So that's why this information is just not added to the Netflix documentary. I still think that it's all very interesting, and I almost feel like stuff that we learned during this trial is definitely more interesting than everything that we've learned on any of these documentaries. My complaint about the documentaries is they lay out the stories really well, like as far as Stephen Smith and the housekeeper, etc. The only thing I have problem with is like they don't really focus much on like the things that matter, like the dynamics of the family. Like they definitely explain, they're corrupt and they're privileged, blah, blah, blah. But, oh, whoops, sorry, Jesse. I won't, it's all the same information. Trust me, if you've seen one of these documentaries, they're all the same. They just kind of elaborate or show a little bit more. There will be a little bit of sound clips from the documentary in this, so it's not too much of a spoiler, but there will be some reference to the documentary here. But I definitely recommend you guys see it. Welcome back to the channel.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh wishes to take the stand.
From the trial and testimonies this week, we learned some new things that the Netflix series did not show us. For those who have been following the Alex Murdaugh trial, know that this case is definitely not black and white. We know that there's a lot of secrets that took place on Moselle, and Paul finding out about his father's pill collection is definitely one event leading up to his murder that I find very interesting. Did that have anything to do with Paul's death?
It says, I am still in EB because when you get here, we need to talk. Mom found several bags of pills in your computer bag.
Now, I just can't help but think about like the series of events that led up to Paul's death and them confronting Alex about his pill usage. I don't know. To me, it seems sort of significant. When he was on the stand, he tried to downplay it and say that they'd been dealing with him doing that kind of stuff for years, etc. But I don't know. I just can't help but leave it as sort of like on my board as something significant. Yeah, I think that is sort of what it could be too, insanely confused. She said, Paul caused Alex too much trouble and money.
Here in the body cam footage as they examine Paul, you can see that the officers want to know if there's a gun laying underneath him.
There is, his law partner is back there.
Hang your in on the bin. Right there. I don't think you're going to put it in through the blackout on the radio.
I don't think he put that phone back on his behind either.
I haven't asked the dad about the phone, but dad did say he came over and checked the pulses. Beyond that, I don't know what else he did.
But if you look back here,
they look and they find nothing. The one officer is very interested in the trajectory that he can see came from underneath Paul, which ends up taking half his head off.
Yeah, see, that's him. Well, he had it bad.
He had a shotgun. He did have a shotgun, but I have secured that in my vehicle.
Yeah, but then it's an upward shot. There's his brain all over the field. Yeah, but that's when he took his head off on the driven.
And you can see this guy. I don't know if he's a senior officer. Marshmallow, are you done trolling CDT chat? So you're here now. Okay. Well, good morning. But anyways, this officer seems, very interested in the upward shot. He pretty much says, I tried to turn it up, but you can just hear that they're having a little conversation with themselves. And he's just very interested in the fact that, the way that the shot happened for Paul was it seemed to come from an angle that they were immediately kind of like suspicious of, or just kind of like, okay, so this wasn't done by Paul himself. So I just wanted to include that part because I do think that it's significant. The crime scene, was there a struggle that took place? And I agree about this comment about his pills. At one point, he did say he was like taking 30 milligram oxys a day. And I agree, it's absolutely like unfathomable and just, I've never seen anything like it. Yeah, I think that that's possible too, Sarah. Shot him from the golf cart, which explains height and angles of shots. For sure, for at least one of them, I think that the golf cart definitely could have been used. Yes, he said 60. Exactly. I think it's impossible too. Doesn't make any sense.
So that damn gun.
The prosecution pulled a brilliant move and pulled out some CCTV footage from the night of the boat accident and questioned Alex about a badge hanging out the back of his back pocket. Alex had come from a family synonymous with enforcing the law as prosecutors in the southern tip of South Carolina for more than 8 decades. He tried only a few criminal cases himself while he worked with his father, a former solicitor. But despite his limited involvement, Murdaugh treated himself to the trappings of office, including a shiny gold badge. 2 of the prosecutor badges AlexMurdaugh once carried have
been introduced as evidence in the double homicide trial.
Here's what he had to say.
I mean, Mr. Waters, if you want me to say I did that on purpose, I don't have a problem with that. I'm saying I don't remember that. All right? So can I tell you that I did that on purpose? No, sir, I can't. Can I say that this happened by accident? No, sir, I can't. What I can say is I don't remember it, and that's not how I would normally, that's just not how I would normally, you know, that's just not, that's not something I did. That's not a normal thing. So I don't know.
We saw.
I do not think that went well for Alex at the stand there about the badge. I think he definitely fumbled at times. I think that the cross-examination with the prosecution went round and round. I think that he and Waters just were going at it as if they were like, I don't know, it's like a weird, like combative dynamic between the prosecutor, Waters, and Alec. Come to find out, they went to law school together. Alec claims he doesn't even remember the guy. Oh, yes, Jesse, we're on the same page. She said, Waters missed a lot of opportunities to ask about the murders. He proved Alex is a liar and a thief. We know that. He did not prove murder during those 2 days. And I would have to agree, like, yes, I think that Alex is guilty. I think that he has a hand in these murders. And thank you, MK, for becoming a member. I really appreciate that. I'm so happy to have you here. Pretty much I'm at the point at this point now, who knows what could happen. Good morning, Malmac. Something and butterfly kisses. Good to see you. 2 lawyers were lawyering at each other. LOL. It was odd. It was nonstop too, wasn't it? It was like watching 2 people who just like refused to admit they were wrong. But it went round and round. Like, well, if you want to say that I did that, well, the thing is though, I have to say that I just don't remember that. So it was just like round and round, like, oh my gosh, like, in my opinion, I have to say, I think that Alex is intellectually more superior than Waters, because I agree with what Jesse was saying. Like, there were times when they really could have hammered him about certain things. And then there were times where Waters would throw out something in between, like Alex's statements, and he'd be like, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And stuff like that. And it's like, why are you adding that in there? Like, it just sounded like a husband and wife arguing at times. And then it was like, he just had to throw in the, sure you did, and stuff like that. And it didn't really help the prosecution's argument. Like, it was just sort of like, okay, do you have anything else? Like, these comebacks, quote unquote, are just not really like filling this like fluff in between. Like, go at him about something. So I don't know. It was just round and round with those 2. But yeah, kind of seems like prosecution doesn't want to prosecute. I'm like, what's going on here? I agree. It was very bizarre. And yes, give me a like if you haven't done so. And good morning, Ruckus Rocks podcast. Yeah, it seems like everyone's commentary or opinion about Waters' commentary it seems the same. Yeah, like a pissing contest, pardon my language there, but that's what it seems like. And, you know, I was in other live chats over the weekend, and we talked about this case, obviously, and everyone sort of had the same thing to say about the prosecution. Everyone was sort of annoyed with him, didn't think he did enough of hammering of Alex. And even though there's other aspects in the case that sometimes we just can't agree on, it seems like everyone was feeling the same way about Waters there in the prosecution. Like, it just didn't go that well. AV says, I got so sick of hearing about the money he stole from people. We didn't need to hear that more than once. He needs to prove that he murdered Paul and Maggie. I agree. And that's where I'm standing now, is like, I definitely think that, you know, he could have conspired. Do I know that he pulled both triggers? I think the prosecution kind of laid out why they think he did and that he could have. And I do think that it's possible, you know, but I just feel like the prosecution didn't prove that that's the only scenario, and that 100% you cannot deny that, you know, it hasn't been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and the state is given the burden of proof. So I just feel like we're all feeling the same. There was a lot of talk of him stealing, but we weren't there for that, right? Yeah, the prosecutor is trying to avoid a sympathy decision for Alex. Well, I don't know. At my point, or at where I am right now, I really don't think that they've been able. I'd be very surprised if they had a unanimous decision of guilty with 12 people. How about you guys? Yeah, I think it could be a hung jury too.
Both Buster and Alex testify this week. Buster was stoic and had that poker face that we're used to. Was anyone else troubled by the fact that he didn't show much emotion at all? Maybe.
I'm curious what you guys are thinking about Buster not really breaking down on the stand. Now, again, I don't want to just berate the guy. Maybe he's just not emotional like that. I just wonder what you guys were thinking about all that. Allison says every time the state would get Alex worked up, the judge took a break. Yeah, it did seem like that. Or he'd be like, let's stand and stretch. And it's like, what? No, we're going after this guy.
Maybe it's something, maybe it's nothing, maybe it's just how the Murdaughs are. There were times even Alex, I felt, should have showed more emotion and he didn't.
Buster, when did you first find out that your mom and brother were murdered?
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot. I kind of just sat there for a minute. I was in shock. But eventually we got our stuff together and drove down to Moselle.
The timeline in this case is very tight. The Snapchat video recorded at 8:44 only leaves a few minutes for Alex to get out of the area before the murders take place. Do you think that that's possible? Do you think it's believable? Let me know your thoughts. Also, the fact that it shows on the GPS, his SUV shows up at the kennels, and then within 17 seconds, he's on the phone with 911 after claiming to check them both seems like a very short window. Do you think Alex is believable here?
On June 7th, 2021.
Now, that's the thing, too, is the time that his car, the SUV's GPS arrives at the kennels, and 17 seconds later he's calling 911. He talks on the stand, and we'll get to it, about how he went over and checked them both. He grabbed Paul's belt loop and tried to flip him over, and that's how his phone fell out, which I thought it was believable. I thought that is a definite possible scenario. But then I thought about it in a way that's not how Alex is describing it. Maybe he didn't go over to Paul and check him and grab his belt loop to flip him to get his phone out. Maybe, and that's the thing, guys. What if his phone was in his front pocket or in his hands? Alec is there by himself, shoots them, goes over to Paul, knowing that Paul was maybe possibly taking a Snapchat or something, grabs his phone and then lays it on his back pocket. Now, in that body cam footage that we showed earlier, one of the cops says well, I don't think that he put his phone on his back, on his bottom that way either. Right off the bat, people were kind of red flagged about his position of his phone laying on him. So when Alex describes the scene and stuff, I just can't help but think it's a lie based on the fact that there's only 17 seconds from the time he arrives there and 911 call. But then the fact that, the series of events that he says took place with Paul's body, flipping him over and stuff like that. I just don't think that it was because he wanted to check his pulse. I think that he flipped him over to get his phone. And then he ended up leaving it on his back pocket once he realized he couldn't get in it or something. So let me just continue this, guys, and let me know your thoughts.
Did you take this gun or any gun like it and shoot your son Paul in the chest in the feed room at your property off Moselle Road?
No, I did not.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take this gun or any gun like it and blow your son's brains out on June 7th or any day or any time
No, I did not.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take a 300 blackout, such as this, and fire it into your wife Maggie's leg, torso, or any part of her body?
No, I did not.
Did you shoot a 300 blackout into her head, causing her death?
Mr. Griffin, I didn't shoot my wife or my son anytime. Ever.
So that was right off the bat. The defense asked him those questions almost within like the first 2 minutes of being up there. Let me just look at the comments. I think Buster had a lot of trauma and might still be numb because he doesn't know the truth, so he avoids it. I feel for him. I could definitely see that, like just having blinders on and not wanting to acknowledge it. I think Paul took his pills and he wouldn't give them back. Alex was searching in his pockets after he killed them. That's definitely possible too, and I've heard people say that. Yes, I've heard that theory. Blue Petunia says, he clearly shot his wife and son in cold blood. He picked up his phone, deleted something, and tossed it back onto the dead body, callous. Now, I don't know if they ever got into his phone, Paul's phone, but either way, I think that, you know, he brings up the fact in his first interview, like, I picked up his phone thinking maybe, and then no. And then in the body cam footage that I showed earlier, one of the first responding officers says that they had already spoken, he had spoken to him about the phone placement, etc. So this phone thing has been like on everyone's radar as far as law enforcement and stuff. And it's been narrated by Alex right off the bat. So I do think that there's something nefarious with Paul's phone laying on his butt. Now Alex claims he didn't know about the Snapchat video, but I just don't know. Allison says he said he checked the bodies to explain the way that the blood on him, right? And I just don't think that like he checked their pulses. You know what I mean? Whatever he was doing with Paul's body was probably to get to the phone. And then he realized that he's locked out of it or whatever, you know?
Finally get an explanation of why Alex's voice is heard on the Kennel video. Here's what he had to say.
Mr. Murdaugh, is that you on the Kennel video at 8:44 p.m. on June 7th, the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
It is.
Were you in fact at the Kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Did you lie to SLED Agent Owen and Deputy Laura Rutland on the night of June 7th and told them that you stayed at the house after dinner?
I did lie to them.
Did you lie to Agent Owen and Agent Croft on the follow-up interview on June 10th that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was at dinner?
I did lie to them.
And in the interview of August 11th, did you tell Agent Owen and Agent Croft, did you lie to them by telling them that you were not down at the Kennels on that night?
Yes.
Get the chicken out of Bubba's mouth?
I did. I took the chicken from Bubba and I put it on top of that.
Now we've seen, you know, this video of Paul with Cash, Rogan's dog. Did you know that was going on? What do you remember about that?
Yeah, I knew Paul was fooling with. When I pulled up on the golf cart, Maggie was standing back, sort of where the driveway would be. It sort of runs out at the feed room. The storage room's what we call it. It's been called the feed room. But it sort of ran out. Maggie was a little bit further up where she could see back in that angle where the dogs were. Paul was fooling with Rogan's dog back towards the kennel. If I remember when I first got there, Paul was more in the driveway, but then I knew Paul was in the kennel fooling with Cash, yes. But did I know what he was doing? I didn't know exactly what he was doing, no.
Prosecution had a chance to ask them themselves about the Kennel video and the series of events that took place after he decided to go back to the house. Here's what Alex had to say.
Down there for a couple minutes, I think you've said now, before you get off the golf cart?
About, yes, sir.
All right. And Where do you go at that point?
I take the chicken from Bubba.
All right, so you get up.
Well, I mean, Bubba's come out there with this chicken. I mean, he's showing us, hey, I caught this chicken. And I take the chicken from Bubba.
So Bubba came up to the golf cart?
He came up by the golf cart. He came up to Maggie and I, which I was on the golf cart. She's by the golf cart. I mean, he's not coming to the golf cart, but he's coming to us.
Is this during the kennel video or is this after the kennel video?
Well, no, you hear Maggie say he's got a chicken. Okay. That's what she's talking about is Bubba caught a chicken.
All right. All right. So is the kennel video still going on before you go get the chicken? I mean, you've heard it, correct? You've heard it in this courtroom.
I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly, but in close timing to Bubba coming out of those woods with the chicken, I got up and took the chicken from him.
So did you say goodbye, according to your new story?
Did I say goodbye?
Yeah. Did you talk to them at all, or did you just get the chicken, put it on there, jump on there, and just take off?
I wouldn't have just gone off. I mean, I would have said, I'm leaving.
Okay.
Did I say goodbye or bye?
And again, go ahead.
I mean, there would have been some, there would have been some exchange. I'm not staying here.
Well, what was that exchange? I mean, you've had such a photographic memory about these new stories. What happened here?
No, that's not. I can't tell you the exact words.
You don't remember your conversation after you put that chicken up? Did y'all talk about the chicken?
No, I don't think we did.
Did you talk with Paul about Cash's tail?
After the chicken?
Yeah.
No, I know I didn't do that.
Did you tell Maggie I'm going to go check on him?
At that point, no, I don't
Did you
think
tell
I did.
Maggie, it's hot out here, think I'll go back?
I certainly would have said something to that effect.
Now, I think that this was one of the few times that Waters actually did put some heat on Alex. And I think that he did sort of struggle with this whole departure at the Kennel situation. Now, when he was talking to his defense, he says something along the lines of, I went straight back, or the defense says something, and you went back to the house at that point. And he says, I went straight back. So, he puts a real emphasis on, heading back to the house, where he even had to add in the descriptive word and to really sell it to us that he went straight back. He didn't just go back to the house. He went straight back. He's really got to sell it to the jury, So the descriptive language there, straight back and really emphasize it because he wants the jury to believe him. And then Waters gets up there and kind of puts the pressure on him here. And I'm sorry, I watched this thing, and as soon as I realized that he couldn't remember if he had said goodbye to his loved ones, that's when I was like, okay, red flag. Now, it's one thing to remember your last conversation with a loved one. That I can kind of be like, okay, well, I guess you don't. Some people just don't remember their last conversation. But what people always end up saying at times like this is, I didn't even get to say goodbye, and we never hear that from Alex. So did he say goodbye? Didn't he say goodbye? Yes, Jesse. And the fact where he says, I got out of there. It's kind of like, did you get out of there because you knew something was coming? Like, I felt like he digs himself his own hole, right?
All right. So, unlike everything else with the new story, you just can't recall what that would have been.
And now just look at the way that Alex is staring at him. He knows that at this point, he's really getting hammered by the prosecution, and it's not going well. I just wanted to say good morning to Carolina. It's good to see you. Shay Benet joined. Thank you for being here. And everyone else, Roxanne, thanks for being here. Jesse, anyone else who has joined, thanks so much for being here.
Well, you're making that categorization. I think there's other things about that I can't remember. But if the question is, can I remember exactly what words I used when I gave Maggie some salutation when I'm leaving, I can't tell you what those were.
And we've seen Alex do this before in police interviews, right? He's asked a question, did you blah, 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 blah. And then instead of saying yes or no right off the bat, he buys himself more time and he'll ask the question back. Are you asking me if I blah, 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 you know, and then he'll say like, no, absolutely not, or something. And it's like, why didn't you just say no off? You know, it's just, he just buys himself that time, and like, we all see it, right? But the question is, does the jury see it? You know, it doesn't really matter what we're all saying. Do the jurors see any of this?
All right.
But it would have been something to the effect of, I'm leaving.
All right. Okay. But you would concede that there was at least some conversation, that you wouldn't have just put the chicken on there and ran back to the golf cart and taken off. Correct?
Without talking to Maggie, I would have never done that.
All right.
Better than it was, ain't it? Clothes that we saw in that Snapchat video was that the clothes you had at work that day?
Yes. Those are the clothes I had on at work that day.
And the jury's seen you in those clothes, and what's on June 7th. How tall were you, and how much did you weigh?
On June 7th, well, I'm a hair over 6'4", right at 6'4". On June the 7th, I was about 265 pounds, 264, 265.
And this was in June, June 7th.
Yes, sir.
You know, when you're outside, riding around and doing, did you get hot and sweaty?
Absolutely. I mean, Paul and I had done some things. We unloaded the bulldozer, cleaned the bulldozer. We'd fooled around. Yeah, I mean, I sweated. I was heavy, and taking prescription pills also makes you sweat worse, or at least taking oxycodone makes you sweat more than you normally do.
So was it unusual for you to take a shower when you got back to the house?
Not at all.
And after you took a shower, what did you change into?
I changed into the clothes that you've seen in this trial, shorts and the shirt.
As they discuss his clothing that he wore that day, and the fact that we just don't have his shoes or his shirt, I'm wondering if the jury knows that the fact that we don't have the shoes and shirt is just as important and telling as if perhaps we did have them.
And that's the thing that I'd like to point out too. And good morning, Karen. It's good to see you. You know, a lot of people are focusing on the shirt. Where are those shoes? The shoes are just as important, in my opinion.
Even though Alex claims that it took law enforcement too long to even ask him about the clothing, where is it? Where are these pieces of clothing?
And remember when Blanca, the housekeeper, indicated that Alex had a conversation with her after the murders where she felt like Alex was almost telling her what shirt he was wearing rather than asking her if she had known what shirt he was wearing that day, and pretty much avoiding the fact that he was wearing that blue shirt, which is gone missing.
What I asked Blanca about specifically was, did she remember getting my clothes after she came back? When she came back to Moselle, did she remember getting my clothes? Is specifically what I asked her.
I see. And why were you asking her those questions?
Because on August the 11th, they had made an issue about me still wearing those clothes, not having changed clothes when I was in that Snapchat video. So that's why I went to Blanca.
Did they ever ask you on August the 11th whether, they ask you for those clothes? Can you produce the clothes? Did they ask you that?
No, they didn't.
Have they ever asked you for those clothes?
No. As far as my understanding goes, my clothes were never an issue in this case until y'all figured out, as my lawyers figured out, that there was no blood spatter on me. I'm well aware that my clothes never became an issue in this case until my lawyers.
And he almost gets more emotional here, knowing that he's got his back up against the wall with this clothing thing. Like, this clothing aspect in the Snapchat where you hear his voice are really, damning against Alex. And it almost is like he's like so upset about this clothing thing that he like gets more worked up at this point than other times where I feel like he should have got more worked up at, with emotions, etc. And somebody asked earlier why the SLED took so long to ask about his clothing. I do not know. I think that the clothing aspect would have been something that they would have asked possibly even on the night of. Maybe when they talked to Rogan and he said something to them about this Snapchat, maybe they were able to, why wouldn't they have been able to ask sooner? I don't know. And I do know, and it does seem as though those who think that he's guilty and those who think that he's not guilty also agree on one thing, that SLED really mishandled this investigation.
Proved that this blood spatter that they said I had on my shirt from my wife and my son was a lie, and that there was no blood on my shirt. And once they filed the documents and they proved that that was a lie, all of a sudden the clothes I was wearing back on that day became an issue.
And it's like, why wouldn't the prosecution or anyone have been like, the prosecution should have said, but you understand why it's an issue, right? I mean, I hope the jury is realizing that it's an issue. He's trying to downplay it, like, oh, suddenly it was an issue, and this stuff wasn't even brought to our attention until, right up until the trial. And it's like, okay, yes, we get it. SLED mishandled stuff, but where are the clothing, Alex? Like, what happened to him?
And that's in the weeks leading up to this trial.
Back to the house.
I went straight back to the house, to the air conditioner.
And what'd you do when you got back to the house?
I lay down on the couch.
And then what? Well, was TV on when you went back?
Yeah, the TV never got cut off.
So you went back to the house, you lay down on the couch, and then what happened next?
And I noticed, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is only a clip of it, but I feel like he didn't really mention the nap to the defense team. But then when he gets cross-examined about things, he brings up the nap and says that it must have been just a few-minute doze. I also want to emphasize, when people say things like, well, if he got out of there, how did he not hear the gunshots? Well, here the defense is laying it out that, the AC's on, the TV's on. At some point he takes a shower and naps, so these are all reasons why they're pretty much laying out that, he just didn't hear it because of all those reasons.
I'm not positive I dozed off for a minute or didn't doze off for a minute, but I got up off of the couch.
A lot of people don't believe that Alex made the 911 call while he was out at the kennels. Many believe that he was possibly in his vehicle while he made the call. The main reason people think that is you really don't hear the dogs barking throughout the whole 911 call. So do you think that his testimony makes sense here?
Did you see them on the ground when you're pulling up in your Suburban?
I did.
And what'd you do when you came to a stop, Alec?
I think I jumped out of my car. I'm not exactly sure what I did, but no, I got out of my car. I know I ran back to my car, called 911. I called 911. I was on the phone with 911, and I was trying to tend to Paul. I was trying to tend to Maggie. And I just went back and forth between them.
Were you going to Paul and Maggie while you were on the phone with the 911 operators?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What did you do when you went up to Paul at some point in time?
And Paul. Paul was so bad. At some point, I know I tried to check him for a pulse. I know I tried to turn him over.
When you say you tried to turn him over, why were you trying to turn him over?
And here's my other thing too. Like, how did he try to turn Paul over? Because we see in the body cam footage, I mean, his knees are completely clean. I'm not saying that there would be dirt immediately, like on his knee, and we'd be able to see it, but you would think, you know, maybe something would indicate that. And not only that, there's no blood on his shoes, you know, and we've seen those officers in the body cam footage in the beginning of the stream. If you guys didn't see it, you know, they're like walking around him, stepping around because there's so much blood and etc. all around Paul. So it just doesn't make sense to me that, you know, it just doesn't seem like he really like handled them the way he's describing he did, in my opinion. And isn't it interesting that we really hear the nickname Paw Paw at this crucial point? You know, Buster goes up on the stand. Never once did he refer to Paul as Paw Paw.
I don't know. I don't know why I tried to turn him over. Me and my boys laying face down. And he's done the way he's done. His head was the way his head was. I could see his brain laying on the sidewalk. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I tried to turn him over. I grabbed him by the belt loop. I tried to turn him over. And when I did, his phone popped out. His phone popped out. And I just picked it up and I put it right back there.
Do you have any idea?
I agree, Butterfly Kisses. She said, half truth. He was checking Paul's phone, not his body. I agree. Hello, Jen Lou. Good morning. And great chat last night. If anyone missed it, watch it on replay. It was very, very interesting. Alex never called him Papa until he got on the stand, right? That somebody says, sorry, scrolling up. Good morning, Phoenix Rising. That was a convenient term of endearment, in my opinion. Agree. And good morning, Crime Curious, and everyone else who's joined us. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, how it popped out?
I mean, I know it came out of his pocket when I pulled on his belt loop. When I pulled him to turn him over, and it just popped out. And I mean, it popped right beside him. It sat right beside him.
Were you able to turn Paul at all?
I mean, I didn't. I don't know if I was able to. I didn't turn him over, no.
I did find the Netflix documentary interesting on this case. I do feel that some of the people speaking on there sort of spoke a little bit badly about Maggie and Paul. Regardless of what they did in their lives, nobody is perfect.
Paul had...
Do you guys agree with me there? Because after I recorded that, I was like, Now, I don't want to excuse Paul for his behavior. I want to make that clear, you know, but he, like everyone else, is just not perfect. He didn't deserve what happened to him, you know. But people, I just thought I was just shocked. I couldn't kind of believe the way that the ex-girlfriend was kind of speaking but in the same sense, I wanted to hear it all, you know. I will say that in some of the Facebook groups, I was like, wow, like everyone's reaction afterwards. At one point in the documentary, I was just like, because here's the thing, you know, I run Facebook group and I run one that's on the Watts case. And we definitely have a rule, like, you know, don't victim blame. People aren't perfect. Shanann might not have been perfect, etc. But the way that Netflix did that documentary, I was like, wow, they're not holding back. And I agree, Jesse, like Mallory deserves justice. And I believe that his girlfriend Morgan's story, it was justified to be heard. And they went through something traumatic being in that boat. Yes, I agree, Karen. She said, I think the survivors were trying to get out the other side of the story. I agree. So I'm like, I think that you can kind of criticize while still being kind. Like, for example, before I started this live, I looked in the Facebook group. I won't name which one, but it's for this case. And it says, I felt sorry for old Mags till I watched the Netflix special. Turns out she was a selfish POS too. And I was just like, wow. And it had like 179 likes on it. One person shared it. There's like 163 comments. I didn't bother going through them all, but I was just like, okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who got this kind of like picture from that Netflix one. Yeah, Sandy says, I appreciate honesty. No, they did not deserve murder, but irritates me to hear them canonized now that they are dead. I see what you mean. Like, and I think that that happens in other cases too. You know, like, there's just other cases where like you end up finding more about the victim and you're like, wow, well, that kind of paints things a little bit differently. Like in the Jodi Arias case, I feel like that guy that she killed was probably playing with her emotions and she wasn't mentally well. So it was like he picked the wrong girl to kind of play with. And I don't think that he deserved it. No, but I look at that case differently than others, I guess. But people seem to be kind of agreeing, but having mixed feelings about the victim shaming. It's uncalled for. Yeah, her view on Alex was telling. Exactly. Either way, they did not deserve this. And, you know, Paul was young. He had time to kind of make up for his mistakes, and he wasn't given that opportunity. You know, like, who's to say that he wouldn't have turned around and been like, I came from this and I ended up in rock bottom. Now I served my time for that boat wreckage, and now I'm this person and I'm better and I'm going to turn that into something positive. You know, he was never given that opportunity. So we just will never know, you know, what it could have been, what kind of person he could have been. And Mallory Beach definitely deserves justice too, you know? So it's very hard. It's a hard case. There's a lot of layers to it. So yeah, let me just continue this. It's just a little bit more about the Netflix show. Some of it has Ashley Banfield in it. So let me just play this and then we'll regroup and go over some notes before court starts, okay?
Some demons. He was not a good drunk and he was not a good boyfriend and he was a bit of a jerk, but
I thought Paul's friend gave a good perspective during the documentary where he says he doesn't believe Paul deserved to die.
I lost a really, really big piece of my heart. You know, I was lost. Started partying again, and you know, like I was a teenager. I acted stupid for a while. I tried to run away from everything. I don't know. I just think everybody's kind of got the wrong idea about what's going on. I've heard all kinds of stuff. I've heard people say that Paul deserved to die. He made a mistake, and yeah, there's a lot of people suffering for it, but nobody deserves to die.
While I was having my surgery on my hand, Randolph just kind of came in and he stared at me. We heard another knock. AlexMurdaugh was like tapping on the glass door, and he was like, I need to get in there. I represent her.
Before I even got there, Alex turned around and said that he was her representation and her acting guardian.
I looked at the head nurse and was like, ma'am, please keep that man out of my room.
I was sort of surprised that the girlfriend said that Maggie was a detached mother to Paul, but at the same point, everyone's perspective is interesting and valid, and it could explain a lot of Paul's behavior issues.
The prosecution was able to get in that AlexMurdaugh paid cousin Eddie to try to shoot him and then to steal insurance money. And the Netflix documentary actually has a different take on that, thinking that Alex never wanted to die, was actually going to turn the tables on cousin Eddie and shoot him and then blame him for the murder. So all this points to a sociopath.
So that was everything that I clipped together for you guys. Let me just refer to my notes. Did you want me to play a little bit of Buster up on the stand? And then we can kind of conclude because court will be starting in like 20 minutes. Let me just see through my notes. And thanks again, everyone, for being here. So yeah, they just cannot explain why the guns are missing, why the shoes are missing, why the shirt is missing. All of that is just very important. You do think that, Jen Lu? See, that makes more sense to me than that he wanted him to end his life or whatever. I thought that that was interesting that the Netflix documentary kind of gave us that theory because that makes more sense, you know? Meet up with cousin Eddie on the roadside, have some fake shot happen to Alec where he had to shoot him back possibly, and he could explain that it was self-defense or whatever, and that Eddie was coming after him, and that Eddie must be the one who killed Maggie and Paul. You know, that would have been like, and I hate to say this, but like that would have been perfect for Alex, you know, but it didn't go down that way. So I thought that was interesting too. And I thought that was a lot more plausible than what the defense has said that it is. Yeah, I know it is very strange. Melmac said if cousin Eddie wanted his cash cow dead, Alex would have died. I think it was an air pellet gun. Whether it was planned or not, who knows? Yes, Eddie, the fall guy for everything. That would have been like the way out. And that's the thing with how smart Alex is. He's done some really stupid things in all this. Oh, thank you, Maggie, Paul. I'm glad you're here. Just found you this morning. Great job. Hello to all in chat. Y'all have a great, productive, and respectful chat too. Thank you. We try. He needed someone to put the blame on, right? And so then what went wrong? He couldn't even do all that? All right, let me pull this up.
And was it a normal weekend?
It was.
Fun weekend?
Yes, sir.
And that Sunday would have been June the 6th, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Buster, when did you first find out that your mom and brother were murdered?
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he, sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot.
And what'd you do?
Serena, good morning. She said Netflix documentary indicated that the only reason that Maggie was going to see Alex was to go to his parents. Why does nobody mention that? Why did she decide not to go with him? Now, from what I remember when Alex was on the stand, he sort of explains this. Now, again, it's Alex, so who knows what he's saying is true or not. But Alex explained it as, his mother's condition had gotten so bad and her dementia was so, he says something along the lines of she was a shell of her old self, and that it was too hard for Maggie to see her at times and to visit her. So ultimately there were times when Maggie just didn't want to go. So he's trying to say like, no, she just didn't want to go. So I don't know. That's how that was explained. Not sure how everybody feels about it. Good morning, E.E. Caroline. It's good to see you. Alex thinks he is better than everyone else. Therefore, he subconsciously figures he does not have to be as careful as an ordinary criminal. His snobbery sabotages his criminality. Right. He's such a narcissist that he's his own worst enemy type. Like, he just can't stop talking at times on the stand. And I'm like, his lawyers must be like, I think at some point they're like checked out. Yeah, cousin Eddie wasn't going to fall for that BS. So that just makes me so curious of like how that scene went. Alec called his lawyer friends to the scene before calling Buster, right? that was questionable. And then in the body cam footage that I shared earlier in the stream, you even hear one of the first responding officers say, because one of the officers says something to that one guy who like wants them to check under his body for the gun. They say something like, because I think they were looking for like extra sheets or something to kind of make it easier to flip or something. He says fire and rescue might have, and I couldn't make out what he was saying. I'll just say it was sheets. And the guy goes, fire and rescue shouldn't be here right now. Like pretty much saying like this crime scene needs to be limited. They don't even need to be here. You know, like there's no rescue in this situation. And then he says, what did he say? Shoot, what does he say? I don't want to replay it, but pretty much he's just saying, you know, fire and rescue doesn't need to be here. And then the one responding officer points out that Alex's lawyer, he's like, his legal partner's here. And like, so obviously one officer was sort of alerted to that being sort of strange and not allowed, because if the one guy is saying that fire and rescue shouldn't even be here, then that legal guy shouldn't be here either. But yet nobody like said anything. A lot of people are intelligent or book smart, but lack common sense. That I agree with.
Well, Brooklyn, my girlfriend, was with me, and I think she heard she could hear my conversation kind of over the phone, and so she just started packing stuff, and I kind of just sat there for a minute. I was in shock, but eventually we got our stuff together and drove down to Moselle.
Do you remember what time you got to Moselle?
It was early in the morning, late in the morning. You know, if we left around 10:30, 11, got there sometime probably around 2 o'clock in the morning.
And when you got there, did you see your dad?
Yes, sir.
What kind of condition was he in? What was his demeanor?
Yeah, his demeanor was, I mean, he was destroyed. He was heartbroken. I walked in the door and saw him and gave him a hug and just broken down.
Could he speak?
Not really.
Was he crying?
Yes, sir.
Who else was in the house? Do you remember?
Yeah. My girlfriend Brooklyn and I got there. Out in the driveway, my Uncle Randy and Uncle John were out there. Chris Wilson and Corey Fleming had just gotten there. They had pulled in behind us, and when I walked in, several of the partners were there. Ronnie Crosby was there, Lee Cope was there, Mark Ball was there, Austin Crosby was there, William Barnes, my buddy Nolan was there. And I'm sure I'm leaving some out, but that's
sure.
What I remember.
And do you remember how long you stayed there?
Stayed there several hours, probably 3 or 4 hours, till about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
And where did you go?
And then we left Moselle and we went to Alameda.
When you say we, who are you talking about?
My girlfriend, my dad, and my Uncle John.
I know this seems kind of trivial, but what was your dad wearing when you first saw him?
Shorts, t-shirt.
Okay. And did you help him pack?
I did, yes, sir.
What did you do to help him pack?
Got his bag and went into the closet, grabbed some t-shirts, grabbed some shorts, grabbed toilet kit.
Now remember Blanca's testimony where she spoke about what the scene of the house looked like when she went in the next morning to clean. There was a pile of t-shirts in Alex's wardrobe area. Some of them were knocked over. People speculated that that was him, Alex knocking them over while he hastily quickly changed into a new outfit. But here the defense has Buster up on the stand, and Buster's pretty much saying, like, I packed for my dad. I grabbed him some t-shirts, so yeah, this can explain the shirt on the floor. And you know what? It's everything that is circumstantial. A good defense will obviously give their interpretation of what's being presented. So I thought that this was a good hand by the defense, whether or not it's true. You guys let me know what you think. Did Buster knock those shirts over? Did Alex knock them over while he was changing? Was Blanca justified to kind of mention them, or was it just something that has just been focused on and it's just a red herring? It actually means absolutely nothing. They were knocked over for hours before the murders, like, so which is it, do you guys think? I don't know. I think that this was a good explanation. I'm not saying I believe it, but I don't know. Buster is so hard to read. Like, I feel like he's genuine at times, but it's hard because we don't really know much about Buster. We know more about Maggie, Paul, and Alex, obviously. He's just been very like stone-faced. Before this trial started, he had made a statement or something saying like he didn't want to make it public that he did support his dad or not, or something like that. So he's just sort of been like a wild card in my book. What are you guys thinking? Yes. Why didn't they show the drone footage in court? The footage of the citizen took of Buster removing guns after the murders. I'm not sure. I'm sure that maybe it was mentioned and the judge declined it, maybe. What are you thinking? Could be true, but I don't think it means much, right? I see what you mean. I wonder what they found while investigating the murders to reopen Stephen Smith's case. Thoughts? Yes, I'm curious there too. My thought on that, Karen, was maybe they had something on somebody's phone. Maybe it was someone's phone gave something that was significant enough for them to reopen the investigation. Not sure.
Put it in the bag and left.
Why were you doing the packing?
Just trying to help him. He was so upset. We were all upset, but just trying to expedite the process of getting Alameda.
When you went in to pack your dad, was there a T-shirt laying on the floor?
I couldn't remember.
Did you get shirts from above the...
Okay, so I'm hearing in chat that drone footage was before the murders, and I think I heard that also. So I wasn't 100% sure on when that drone footage was. But I did hear that it was before, but I didn't want to say 100% because I don't even know if that's 100% true. So what are you guys thinking? I think Buster is calculated like his dad and doesn't want to incriminate himself in case of future events that may unfold against him, right? The fact that he was kicked out of law school for plagiarism, I'm curious how that was all discovered and unraveled. Buster is saying what he's been told to say. Yeah, I think so too. Buster is stuck between the connections, even are left for his own benefit, but he's playing the middle for his own future and probably will deny his father's wrongdoing in this social circles, right? I think that he's definitely the type to move past it if his father is acquitted of murder, just to solidify, like you said, to keep things connected with the connections that they still had or need or find useful. Okay, the drone footage was after the murders. Okay, 3 months after, everyone's saying. All right, I wasn't 100 on that. Yeah, liars lie and liars raise their kids to lie. And take all this out of take the murder away. Let's pretend Alex never got confronted about him stealing money. Let's pretend all this didn't happen. Buster, he probably still would have been kicked out of law school for doing what he was doing, So it totally goes with the whole, they raise their kids that way. I think that would have been, even if Alex never got confronted, I think that Buster plagiarizing in law school was probably always going to happen.
I don't.
Objection to formal question.
Where did you get the T-shirts from?
Got them from the closet, and there's like wooden shelves up on the wall, and I was getting the T-shirts from there.
Were there a lot of T-shirts on the shelf?
Yes, sir.
Do you know whether or not one of the T-shirts fell on the floor when you were packing?
I don't know whether one of them fell on the floor or not, but I mean, certainly could have happened.
When you got to Moselle, were you able to get some sleep?
No, sir.
Did you go back to Moselle the next morning?
Yes, sir.
And who went with you?
Me, my girlfriend Brooklyn, and my dad, and maybe John Marvin. I don't know if he was riding with us or already out there separately, but he was somewhere in the mix.
Do you remember roughly what time you got to Moselle?
I mean, I think we got there rather early. You know, nobody really slept, and you know, about early in the morning, sun comes up. Just
did
go back.
Did you take a shower and Brooklyn take a shower at Alameda, or did you do it over at Moselle?
No, sir. We slept tried to sleep at Alameda, and then we took everything back with us to Moselle, and we showered there.
Do you know where your dad took a shower that morning?
Yeah, Moselle.
And when you went back over in the morning, do you know what your dad was wearing? When you were traveling from Alameda back?
No, not specifically, but I know that, you know, I know what I packed, so it could have been any of that. It's just athletic shorts and
I thought that was curious too, Jen Lou. So this is the day after the murders, you know, right? We're speaking about the day after. I just want to make sure I'm not getting confused. You know, they're asked, we know that Blanca said that there was a puddle next to Alex's shower, and that she ends up cleaning the shower, etc. You know, so to know that people showered there, now that sort of explains why there was water there and why, you know, maybe Alex got in the shower, or, you know, try to normalize the fact that they were all there showering, or that the shower was used. And that's the thing, is like, why after your mother and your son was killed would the entire family go back to the crime scene and sort of act like everything's fine and that they're safe? You know, you're super vulnerable when you're even in the shower anyways, you know? Like, I remember living alone and knowing that my front door was locked and had like the chain lock, and I'd still be in the shower, like turning the music down at times, like, did I hear something? You know, it's just you're in a vulnerable state, let alone knowing that your mother and your brother were killed the night prior, you know. It's just, it doesn't make sense to kind of put yourself in a dangerous position, because it was supposed to be painted as like, yes, this was retaliation, etc. So to me, that's a red flag. I don't know why Buster, you know, he's just been groomed by his father pretty much. So he's just doing whatever he needs to do. And yes, please give me a like. Appreciate that, CDT, and good morning to you. Yep, puddles at the kennels too. Right. So there is all this extra water, etc., and all that. So I don't know. I want to know who put the wet towels on the floor. Those towels are like Yellow Cup in the Ezra McCandless case. Oh, I don't know that one. Unless you know you're safe, Blue Petunia says. Right. How would they have known or come to the conclusion that they were safe? Same with what Jen Lou was saying on her live stream last night. You know, at the point where Alex is in his first police interview and he says, you know, about grabbing the gun, he's like, probably overreacting. But it's like, why would you think that you were overreacting on this scene of your family? Like, I don't think grabbing a gun is overreacting, unless you know you're safe, right? And then it's sort of like, I guess I didn't really need that. All right, guys, let me finish up this with Buster on the stand. I'll play a few seconds of clips that we played earlier, not even a lot. So if you didn't see the first half of the stream, please go back and watch it. I appreciate that. And court's starting soon. So let me just get through this, guys. I might end up just closing the stream right after this. So this could be my goodbye. Thank you for being here. We'll be following this case, obviously, and other cases as well. So thanks so much.
T-shirts and stuff.
Okay. And after you got to Moselle, and I guess just carrying the days forward, were you with your dad? Well, how often were you with your dad once you got back to Moselle on the 8th?
Yeah, every day.
For how many days?
For a good while.
Okay, so let's talk about where you stayed on the night of the 8th. Do you remember?
Night of the 8th would have either stayed back in Alameda, or that's potentially when we made the transition over to John Marvin's hunting lodge.
Okay. Were you would you say we, or are you including your father?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you drive together?
Yes, sir.
And was he pretty much in your eyesight for the first few days?
Yes, sir.
And so after the 8th, and then you come up on the 9th, a Wednesday, do you know whether you were at Alameda or spending the night at your Uncle John Marvin's place?
Yeah, I think at that point we had switched over to his place over at Greenfield.
Now, and you call it Greenfield, that's the name of his hunting?
Yes, sir, just the name of the property overall.
Property. Now, how far is it from Alameda?
To Greenfield?
Yeah.
A couple minutes. I mean, not
close
very.
By. Close
yeah,
by.
Right down the road.
And then, and do you remember how long you stayed at Greenfield with your dad?
Yeah, I mean, several days. And, I think anywhere from the 9th to the, probably that rest of that week through that weekend.
Yeah, on Thursday, June 10th, what happened?
Grandfather died.
So the family was together and stayed together?
Yes, sir.
Do you ever remember your dad disappearing for any periods of time?
No, sir.
Were you physically close to him most all the time?
Yes, sir.
Except when you were sleeping?
That's right.
Happy birthday to you. All right. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you.
Thank y'all so much. Hey. Thank you, baby.
Thank you so much, Pizza Chemist. And if anyone's looking for a live stream later, we'll be over on CDT's chat. If she goes live, she said it'll be around 6. So if you're not doing anything, join us there if the show ends up taking place, and we can talk more true crime over there. And I just want to thank all my members and all my moderators. Thank you so much. I have linked, and my moderators have linked some of the Facebook groups that I run. One of them has a bunch of random cases where we talk about anything true crime related. And then the other one that I have pinned now is just a Chris Watts discussion group. So if you'd like to join those, we carry on the discussion there. Good morning, House Huddle. It's good to see you. So let me just play a couple more clips, literally just a few seconds, and then that'll be it. I hope you guys enjoy your week. I'll be watching the trial. I'm sure you guys will be too. And then I'll be pulling out some interesting stuff so that we can come back here and discuss more. So thank you so much, guys. Have a great week.
It's a long story. My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats.
Hey, watch your step.
There is parts next to him there.
Thank you, Roxanne, for the Cash App. You guys have a great night and day.